Kristi Rodriguez, we're so thrilled to have you here. You've just been promoted. You're Senior Vice President of Nationwide. I want to look at this Retirement Institute. So that's great. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for participating in our event. It was a great talk that you had. And interestingly, we had this, our industry and transition event that was based around health, wealth, and politics, and you managed to weave all of that into your presentation. So that was pretty good.
Thank you. Yeah, we tried to cover as much as we possibly could, covering all those topics, and it was just a great forum. So thank you for inviting us.
Well, what's interesting to me, of course, enjoyed your talk, is that how much, and I'm sure this occurred to you too when you were doing it, how much our business, really coincides and connects with all of those topics. How important is healthcare, is people's health, and then they need their health care and their finances. And, our industry is really at the crossroads of so many of those topics. And that was kind of what you covered.
No, for sure. Yeah, the intersection of health and wealth is becoming critically important. You really cannot separate them in two separate silos now. And I think just the acceleration of the pandemic has even made it even more pronounced on really how we have to think about our short-term health as well as our long-term health and wealth and how much they coincide.
And, since the event, we've actually pretty much had a finalization of the election. We have now the Biden administration coming in. So that was one thing that got solved between now and then. And then we also have some vaccines coming. So that should have an impact as well on how we look at the pandemic. And I know you also talked about different generations maybe having different views of the pandemic. I thought that was very interesting.
Yeah, thank you for that. It's so true. I mean, we generally tend to think about, and we have done a lot of survey with our older population, our boomers, but what we had transcended to do last year, and it kind of moved into this year, is really looking at millennials and Gen Xers and boomers and how they're all responding. And one of the things, I'm glad you mentioned the vaccine, that's going to be critically important as I think about our Gen Xers and our millennials, is to take advantage of that when it's approved and safe to do so, because that is one of the mechanisms in terms of preventative care that can allow you to have that longevity for your health, not just now, but in the future. It appears that our boomers are a little bit more accustomed to doing things like their flu shots and the other preventative measures, which we're really excited about in our survey this year. And I would just stress upon the fact that we all need to think about what are those things that we can do now to prepare ourselves to be even healthier as we move into retirement.
You mentioned the boomers, and I always since I'm a little closer to that generation than not, I always have some empathy and sympathy for those folks, because they've had to watch through something you try to plan for retirement, but now you have these things thrown at you. Nobody planned 10 years ago, oh, we're going to if we have a pandemic, this is what you do. Or this is what could happen to your portfolio. So they're having to deal with a lot of issues that are being thrown at them. And that makes financial planners so much more important, an important part of the equation.
So true. I think financial planners now are more important than ever. And we saw this in our COVID survey as well. Over a third of individuals who currently weren't using financial planners are seeking to do so now. And the ones that have them really said, I'm going to my financial planner just, out of a couple of other things that we wouldn't traditionally think about. One, they're asking them a lot more questions around health and needing to have that comfort level of someone to talk to. But we have to also remember within the pandemic, we're dealing with a lot of social isolation, which is one of the top mental health that is also leading now into physical health aspects. And it was just amazing to see how many of these respondents saying, I'm going to my financial advisor just so I can have someone to talk to, just providing that comfort level. So now more than ever, financial professionals play a critical role in their clients' longevity, as we think about the future, but also in those short-term aspects in which they really need to engage with them now.
And that's no surprise to good financial advisors, because there's always been a little bit of, psychiatrist in every financial advisor, because, money's a weird thing. People have different, responses to it. You have people, and I find the most hard to deal with, I don't want to leave any money to my kids, or you have to kind of work through everybody's personal, issues around it, because it's, philosophically who you are is how you're going to, leave your legacy.
I cannot agree more. It's nothing much more to add to that aspect. You're so spot on. And I think financial advisors and professionals play a critical role when we think about the behavioral science. So, your natural inclination when you see the markets changing so rapidly as we have with the pandemic is to take action. And that financial planner really plays a sound voice and helping their clients understand just by not reacting to some of the short-term aspects, how that will play out for them to their benefit long-term. So you're right. It's a full psychologist method that I applaud financial planners for doing in this day and time and always.
And some of the traditional things that you think may be swept aside because these times are so unique have turned out to still be the right thing. I was just looking at a study that the buy and hold strategy is the one thing that did work through all this nonsense and is still working today.
Right.
So that's a real positive for our folks too. Another thing that you talked about, which obviously we hit on our event, was diversity and inclusion. And what I, really, enjoyed about your conversation is the business case for it, which is the case that I always make, and not, just because, look, we have an 80% failure rate in this business anyway for everybody. It's hard to do, but you can't sort of ignore the numbers. And I think what people get worried about is, oh, well, it's a hard business. It's not for everybody, but the numbers don't lie. And it has to be, if you're competitive, that's great, but you have to have a level playing field. It's got to be fair, in order to have a real level playing field. And that's kind of what we're talking about. And then you make the case that, look, this is the biggest growing consumer segment. This is one of the fastest growing. African-American middle class is the fastest growing segment. And people want to relate to the people they do business with. And I made the example of, my dad was a dentist. My first clients were all dentists.
Right.
That's what I do, and they were comfortable with me. I knew a few things about running a dental office. That was it. So, I mean, I love the idea of working with this segment. Let's try to bring more people in the tent, because financial planners are great and they can really help.
That's so true. And I look at it twofold. It's really about how do we bring more Black advisors into the industry? Because one, it's just an option that has not been there. And when we look at the demographics of the US population to our industry, it's just disproportionate amount of Black advisors. So that's one aspect. But I love that you double clicked on another important aspect. It's really about, even if you're not a Black advisor serving a Black client, how can you cultivate trust and empathy? All programs we have within the Institute to relate to that client population to continue to grow your book of business, being that, to your point, it is one of the fastest growing populations that is underserved, and one that definitely wants to have financial planning representation. In that last survey and study that we conducted around COVID, out of the African-American respondents, 55% said, I want to engage with the financial advisor who can meet my unique needs. So it's a market that's primed, to be served, but also there's an opportunity for us to bring more people of color into financial services to serve those clients as well.
And as you know, I've written articles about this too, and in a lot of ways, our business is interesting because the best job is the beginning job. You're much better off, no offense to all managers out there, including myself, but it's a drag to be a manager versus if you're a successful advisor, that's the best job in this business. It doesn't matter. You're your own boss. You set your own hours. No one's bothering you. Your clients love you. That's the best job. To be an advisor is great.
Yes, it is. And it's particularly great opportunity for individuals who are millennials that are looking for that, entrepreneurial type of role. You're right. It is much more fascinating and dynamic to be an advisor, to be on the ground, building your portfolio, your client base. That is like the most opportune time. And so it's really also about some of the work that we're doing, creating this opportunity for individuals to see that this is a viable industry to grow and to, build wealth and legacy for you and your family.
Yeah, well, that's it. It's also, it's a great way to sort of, a lot of advisors are the first, people with any wealth in their families. It's a great way to have a legacy for your own children. So it's a great business. I'm all for it. So tell me a little bit, you touched on it, at the event in your talk, the Retirement Institute. It's amazing. We talked about the health care aspects of it, but this is something you're putting together. So 2021 or now, advisors can go to this and sort of get educated on this constantly changing, retirement dynamic.
Sure. So please go out to Nationwide Financial /Nationwide Retirement Institute. We have a plethora of resources, tools, calculators that you can leverage and content for your clients. Really, our role is simply how do we create actionable insights and turn those into ways that you can service your clients in their life's most critical moments. So we have everything from healthcare topics, long-term care, social security, how to, address women in retirement, as I just discussed, some of the diverse populations and a number of other aspects as well for you to leverage for your client. Probably the most exciting one that I'm really proud of that we just recently launched is Medicare. We know that a lot of clients are going to their financial planners and professionals to talk about what are their Medicare options. And we give you kind of the one-on-one way to have that conversation with your client and a tool to leverage with them so they can make the best decision around their healthcare. So please visit us. And certainly if you want to send any message or note, we're welcome to receive that as well. But we're here to serve you through the content and solutions that we have through the Institute.
I think, one thing this pandemic and working from home and all the virtual stuff has done is it has really put an emphasis on the holistic piece of the advisor, puzzle. And just so people know, I'm not talking to you from a penitentiary. So this is actually a house we're remodeling, so don't worry about the background. It just is what it is, Kristi. Well, look, we look forward to talking to you. I look forward to seeing you down here in Middleburg at some point, Virginia. So we'll have the salamander. That's right. Thank you so much. Thank you for your participation in the event and all the good information. We appreciate it.
And thank you so much for having us. Looking forward to partnering in the future.
Thank you.
Thanks.